Imagine you're just an ordinary teenager, sitting quietly in class trying your best to keep up, when suddenly your teacher points to a complicated math equation and says, "Solve this, and I'll give you my entire salary." Sounds unreal, right? But that's exactly what happened to Jamal, a black student whose life was about to change in ways no one could predict. Jamal wasn't the kind of kid who drew attention to himself. He wasn't the loudest or the fastest in class, but he had a quiet determination, the kind that grows from knowing life isn't always fair. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were few and challenges many, Jamal had learned early, on that every small victory counted. His mother worked 2 jobs, and his father was away most of the time trying to make ends meet. So school wasn't just a place to learn, it was a chance to change his future. That morning, Jamal woke up feeling the usual mix of nerves and hope. Math class had always been tough for him, especially when Mr. Thompson was the one teaching. Mr. Thompson was known for his strict rules and no-nonsense attitude, but also for being the kind of teacher who believed that pushing students hard was the only way to get results. Jamal respected him, but sometimes that respect felt heavy, like walking on a thin line where one mistake could bring disappointment. The classroom was buzzing with the usual chatter as students settled into their seats. Jamal sat near the back, trying to focus on the board, but his mind kept wandering to the problem Mr. Thompson had assigned last week, one he still hadn't solved. Suddenly, the classroom fell silent as Mr. Thompson picked up a piece of chalk and wrote a new equation on the board. It wasn't just any problem. It was a tough algebraic expression, the kind that left even the best students scratching their heads. Then, without warning, Mr. Thompson turned toward Jamal and said, "Solve this equation, and my salary is yours." The words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down in a duel. The room froze. Students exchanged shocked glances. Some thought the teacher was joking. Others wondered if this was some kind of test to embarrass Jamal. But Jamal's heart pounded hard. It wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, about proving that he could rise above the expectations set for him. The weight of that moment pressed down like never before. What made it even more complicated was the secret Jamal held. In his pocket, a folded note from a complete stranger. Earlier that morning on the crowded school bus, Jamal had noticed a heavily pregnant white woman struggling to find a seat. Without thinking twice, he had stood up and offered her his spot. She had smiled with gratitude, quietly slipping a small piece of paper into his hand before stepping off the bus. The note felt strange yet powerful, but Jamal had barely had a chance to open it before Mr. Thompson's challenge stopped everything else. The silence in the classroom was deafening as Jamal began to work on the problem. His fingers trembled slightly as he moved his chalk across the board, carefully calculating each step. The teacher watched intently, eyes sharp as a hawk. Around him, students held their breath, waiting to see if Jamal would crack the code or falter under the pressure. Meanwhile, the words from the note buzzed in Jamal's mind, even though he hadn't read them yet. What message could a complete stranger, someone he barely knew, be sending him? Was it just a thank you, or was it something more? A message of hope, of belief, of encouragement maybe? Minutes passed, and the tension in the room grew thicker. Sweat beaded on Jamal's forehead, but he refused to give up. He had already come too far. But then, just as he was about to write down what he thought was the final answer, the classroom door creaked open. The classroom door creaked open slowly, breaking the thick silence like a sudden crack in glass. Every eye shifted toward the entrance, curiosity mixed with a little tension hanging in the air. Jamal's heart skipped a beat, the chalk in his hand, trembling just a little. He wasn't sure if the interruption would help or make things worse. A woman stepped in, her face tired but kind, holding a folder clutched tightly to her chest. It was the same woman from the bus, the pregnant woman Jamal had given his seat to. She glanced around the room, and her eyes met Jamal's for just a moment. Without saying a word, she nodded slightly and took a few steps forward toward Mr. Thompson. The teacher's stern expression softened for the first time that day. He reached out and took the folder from her hands. The woman whispered something in his ear, but Jamal couldn't catch what was said. Then, without looking back, she turned and quietly left the room. The door closed behind her, leaving the students wondering what had just happened. Jamal felt a strange mix of relief and unease. What was that about? Who was that woman? And why? Did she come to the classroom at such a crucial moment? His mind was spinning faster than before. The note in his pocket suddenly felt heavier. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat and turned back to the board, but his eyes kept flickering toward Jamal. There was a new seriousness in his tone as he said, "Jamal, the clock is ticking. You have a choice. Solve the problem or walk away." Jamal's fingers tightened around the chalk. He wanted to speak, to ask questions, but the words wouldn't come. The classroom seemed to close in around him. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights, the whispers from students exchanging guesses, even the tapping of a pencil somewhere in the back. It all felt amplified. Jamal took a deep breath, focusing on the equation. He tried to block out the distractions and the weight of the teacher's challenge. But even as he worked through the steps, his mind kept drifting back to that woman and the note. When the bus had stopped earlier that morning, Jamal had noticed her struggling to balance the weight of her pregnancy and a small bag of groceries. Her face showed exhaustion, but also quiet strength. Offering her his seat wasn't just a good deed, it felt like the right thing to do. She had smiled in a way that felt genuine, a smile that seemed to say, "Thank you for seeing me." The note she gave him was folded small, almost hidden in his pocket. Now, with the tension in class rising, Jamal finally pulled it out. The paper was thin and worn, with neat handwriting inside, but it wasn't a simple thank you. The note read, "Believe in yourself, even when others don't. Your strength is greater than any challenge you face." Jamal's eyes lingered on the words. They weren't just kind, they were powerful. Words like these could change how someone saw themselves. They made him feel less alone, as if someone believed in him even when the whole world seemed to doubt. Yet, the question nagged at him. Why had a stranger gone out of her way to give him this message? And why now, right before the hardest moment he had faced in school? As Jamal tried to steady his shaking hand and refocus on the math problem, his mind raced. This wasn't just a test of numbers, it was a test of his courage, of his belief in himself, of his ability to stand up, not just in front of a classroom, but in life. The students whispered among themselves, some doubtful, others quietly rooting for Jamal. A few glanced toward Mr. Thompson, wondering what the teacher's real intentions were. Was this challenge fair? Was it kindness or cruelty masked as a game? The air was thick with uncertainty. Jamal's fingers traced the equation one more time. He began to write again, step by step, trying to remember everything he had learned. The classroom clock ticked loudly. Time was slipping away. But then, a sudden knock on the door startled everyone. Mr. Thompson looked irritated but signaled for whoever it was to come in. The door opened again, this time revealing the school principal, Mr. Daniels. His face was serious, his eyes sharp as he scanned the room. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice calm but firm. Mr. Thompson explained briefly, his voice carrying a mix of pride and challenge as he described the bet he had made with Jamal. The principal's expression didn't change. He turned toward Jamal and asked, "Are you ready to finish this?" Jamal swallowed hard. He nodded, but the pressure only grew. The principal's presence made everything feel heavier, more important. This wasn't just a classroom challenge anymore. It was something bigger. Mr. Daniels pulled a chair up beside Jamal and sat down. "I'm not here to rush you," he said softly, "but I want you to know something. Sometimes what looks like a test isn't about the answer. It's about how you face the challenge. Jamal looked up, surprised. For a moment, the principal's presence was calming instead of intimidating. It was like a reminder that someone else understood what this felt like. The fear, the pressure, the hope. As Jamal started to work again, he felt the eyes of the entire classroom on him. Every number he wrote, every calculation he made, carried the weight of more than just grades. It was about respect, belief, and maybe even justice. Outside the window, clouds were gathering. The bright morning light was beginning to fade. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The note's words echoed softly in Jamal's mind. Believe in yourself, even when others don't. He wasn't sure if he would solve the equation or win the teacher's salary. But in that moment, he realized this was about more than just money. It was about proving something to himself, something no one could ever take away. And yet the story was far from over, because just as Jamal was about to write his final answer, the classroom phone rang sharply, breaking the silence again. Mr. Thompson's face tightened, and the principal looked toward the door with sudden concern. What could this urgent call mean? Who was on the other end? And how would it affect what was about to happen? The tension in the room rose even higher, and Jamal's chalk froze in midair. All eyes turned toward the teacher, waiting for the next move. But no one was ready for what came after. The sharp ring of the classroom phone seemed to cut through the tension like a knife, pulling everyone's attention away from Jamal's chalkboard battle. Mr. Thompson hesitated, exchanging a quick glance with Principal Daniels before answering. His voice was tight, controlled, but a shadow of worry flickered across his face. "Hello? Yes. This is he?" The words came slowly, each one weighed down by an unexpected urgency. As he listened, his eyes narrowed, and his grip on the phone tightened. Jamal watched closely, the unfinished equation forgotten for a moment. The entire atmosphere shifted. When Mr. Thompson finally hung up, he looked toward the students, then to Jamal, his voice quieter but still firm. "There's been an incident. I need to step out for a moment." Principal Daniels nodded in agreement. "Stay calm, everyone. We'll handle this." He motioned to Jamal. "Why don't you take a short break, too? Clear your mind." Jamal hesitated, heart pounding. He wanted to stay and finish the problem, but the seriousness on the adults' faces was enough to pull him aside. As he left the room, whispers filled the air, questions without answers, rumors already forming in the minds of his classmates. Outside the classroom, Jamal's hands trembled slightly as he clutched the note again. The words seemed louder now. Believe in yourself, even when others don't. It was like a lifeline. But the reality of what was unfolding made the encouragement feel distant. Walking down the empty hallway, Jamal's thoughts swirled. Who could be involved in this incident? How did it relate to him? Was it connected to the woman on the bus, or was this something completely different? Back in the classroom, Mr. Thompson and Principal Daniels spoke quietly, their tones serious. Jamal caught fragments of words as he passed by the door. Threat, security, concern. His mind raced. Was this about the note, the pregnant woman, or something about Jamal himself? The truth was, Jamal's life had never been simple. At school, some teachers doubted him because of where he came from. Some students judged him before, even knowing his name. He had learned to keep his head down, work hard, and avoid trouble. But deep down, Jamal wanted more than just to get by. He wanted respect, recognition, and the chance to prove himself. In the days leading up to this moment, Jamal had noticed something strange. A few teachers whispered behind closed doors. Some students had stared in ways that made him uncomfortable. He had even overheard a rumor that the school was under scrutiny for how it treated certain students. None of it made sense, and yet it all felt connected. Now, with the sudden emergency and the teacher's challenge hanging over him, Jamal realized he was caught in something much bigger than a classroom test. Meanwhile, across town, the pregnant woman who had given Jamal the note was facing her own struggles. Her name was Sarah. She was a social worker, known for quietly helping families in difficult situations. Today, she had rushed to the school, carrying important documents that could impact the lives of many students, including Jamal. Sarah had seen firsthand how some kids, especially those from tough neighborhoods, were overlooked or underestimated. She believed in giving them chances, opportunities to shine, even when the system seemed stacked against them. That's why she had slipped the note to Jamal. She saw something in him, a spark of resilience and kindness that reminded her why she did what she did. But Sarah's visit wasn't just about encouragement. The incident that had just unfolded at the school involved a threat to student safety, something serious enough to bring in the principal and require immediate action. It was connected to a group that had been causing trouble in the area, something Jamal's neighborhood knew all too well. As Jamal wandered the quiet halls, he felt the weight of all these unseen forces pressing down on him. The teachers, challenge, the note from Sarah, the emergency that had interrupted everything. They all felt like threads woven into a complicated tapestry. Back in the classroom, the students were restless. Some whispered about Jamal's talent. Others questioned the fairness of the whole situation. A few worried about what might happen next. The tension between hope and fear was thick, impossible to ignore. Mr. Thompson returned after what felt like hours, his face drawn but determined. He didn't speak much, but when he looked at Jamal, there was a new respect in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the challenges Jamal was facing beyond just the classroom. "Jamal," he said quietly, "when you're ready, come back. This isn't just about the equation anymore." Jamal nodded, feeling the weight of those words. He knew this test was bigger than numbers on a board. It was about proving who he was, what he could overcome, and how far his kindness and courage could take him. As the school day edged toward its end, the sun outside dipped low, casting long shadows through the windows. Jamal sat alone for a moment, staring at the note once more. The mystery of the pregnant woman, the teacher's challenge, and the school's sudden crisis all swirled around him like a storm he couldn't yet control. What would happen when he returned to the classroom? Would he find answers or more questions? Would his quiet strength be enough to face what was coming next? The only thing Jamal knew for sure was that his life was about to change in ways he never imagined, and that the real test was just beginning. The halls were unusually quiet as Jamal walked back toward the classroom, each step heavier than the last. The note still clenched in his hand felt like a small anchor amid the storm swirling around him. Every face he passed seemed distant, as if caught up in their own worries and fears. But Jamal couldn't stop thinking about what was waiting inside. The unfinished equation, the expectant eyes of his classmates, and the serious looks from Mr. Thompson and Principal Daniels. When he pushed the door open, the room felt different. The earlier chatter was gone, replaced by a thick silence charged with anticipation. Jamal's classmates stared at him, some with quiet hope, others with skepticism. The air was heavy with unspoken questions. Could he solve the impossible? Was this really just about math, or was something deeper at play? Mr. Thompson stood near the board, the equation still written clearly in white chalk. His eyes met Jamal's, a mixture of challenge and something that almost looked like respect. "Take your time," he said quietly, "but remember this isn't just about the numbers." Jamal nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. He could feel the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. It was more than a test. It was a crossroads. One mistake could cost him respect. One success could change everything. As he took the chalk, Jamal's mind raced back to the note's words. Believe in yourself, even when others don't. Those words had become a quiet anthem inside him, a reminder that this moment wasn't about proving anyone else right or wrong, it was about standing tall no matter what. He started carefully, working through the problem step by step, but every number and symbol seemed to mock his nervousness. Time moved slowly. The ticking of the clock echoed in his ears. Every breath he took felt loud in the silent room. Suddenly, the classroom door opened again. This time it was Sarah, the pregnant woman from the bus. She walked in without hesitation, her presence commanding yet calm. The room shifted instantly, students whispering among themselves. Jamal's eyes locked with hers, and for a moment, the chaos around them faded. Sarah moved toward Jamal and handed him a small folded paper. "You're stronger than you know," she said softly. "This might help." Jamal unfolded it and saw scribbled formulas, clues, hints that connected to the equation on the board. His heart jumped. Was this a lifeline or another test? Questions flooded his mind. Why was she helping him now? How much did she know about what was happening in this school, in this neighborhood? Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the room. "You have 5 minutes." Jamal's fingers trembled as he incorporated the new information, racing against time. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Every eye was fixed on him, waiting, hoping, judging. The tension was electric, thick enough to taste. Outside, a storm was gathering. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, matching the storm inside Jamal's chest. He was no longer just a student facing a math problem. He was a young man standing at the edge of something much bigger. Questions about who he was, what he deserved, and how far he was willing to go to claim his place. As he wrote the final steps, Jamal noticed some of his classmates leaning forward, others holding their breath. Even Principal Daniels seemed caught between anticipation and disbelief. But before Jamal could write the final answer, the power flickered and went out, plunging the classroom into darkness. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. The sudden silence was louder than before. "Stay calm," Mr. Thompson's voice rang out, steady but strained. Jamal's heart pounded wildly. The moment felt suspended, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. In the darkness, Jamal felt something else, a growing strength, a quiet certainty that this moment, no matter how terrifying, was his to face. The note's words whispered again, steady and sure, and then, in that heavy silence, the classroom door creaked once more, this time revealing someone no one expected. The story was about to reach its breaking point.